Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're in the Wayback Time Machine for this episode. We're going to be looking at a Shakespeare Triumph 1958. It's a model GK. And if I go to the Shakespeare dating sheet, that secret decoder tells us that G is 1940 and K is 1. So this one is actually pre-World War II. Very interesting reel all around. And well, we're going to show one of our viewers, Julie, asked if she was missing a spring and what about the drags. Well, but honestly, this is a knuckle buster reel, so I'm a little bit curious what it is that we're being asked for, unless it's this little piece on the back here. Okay, we're going to take this reel apart completely. We're going to show you how it's made. We're going to clean it up, and we're going to make sure that this has a long life left in it. And well, maybe I'll even take it out on the water. I love these reels. They are knuckle busters. There's front and back. There is no free spooling. And well, we're going to put it out there, see what we can do. We're going to start by removing the exterior pieces. As I do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. If you like the idea of fishing reel service and repair, if you like to learn about fishing reels, and if you like to play along in terms of how reels are serviced, learn from them and service them yourselves, well, then I would encourage you to subscribe. Well, after trying twice with screwdrivers, I'm going to try with a nut driver. That'll loosen it up. You need to be careful with these older reels. If you break something, well, you're going to be out of luck. As we mentioned, this one's 1941. Kind of scary in and of itself, even though it's titled as a 1958. That's just the naming for it. It wasn't the year that it was made. Shakespeare uses a 2-letter alpha code for a lot of their older reels, and that alpha code does tell you when the reel was made. And much like vehicles or cars at the time, Shakespeare would put a model number on there that would tell you the year that it was made. That process, I believe, was discontinued in the 1970s, but it is kind of interesting that you can pinpoint the year that the reel was manufactured. Okay, there's 4 side plate screws that are important to remove the side plate with. There is a plastic or a Bakelite or a rubber, depending on what was used. There's a spacer here on the side plate. And some of them you're going to find is going to complete metal shell. Some of those do have this. Some of these, because of age, contract and cause the reels to have problems. Now, this one didn't have any problems other than, well, just slow performance. Okay, we've removed the 4 screws. That should enable us to remove the side plate. These 2 should be bridge screws. We'll take a look at that as soon as we get it off. Okay, well, that's the dreaded plate that I've referred to, and you can see we have a lot of dried grease on there. Notice when you take the reel off what side was facing out, what side was facing in. That's important. And then we can remove our spool. There's a little clip here that's going to enable us to remove the worm gear. And we're going to need to move that worm gear over to the side so that we can remove the pawl assembly and get a good cleaning underneath there on the shield. Well, when I take my pieces and parts off, I like to put them into a parts tray so they don't get lost. You saw the examples of that with the screws. I just removed the plate screw for the pawl. I'm going to get my micro pliers out and remove the pawl cap. You can see the cap there. And underneath that cap, we do have the line guide pawl. These are all very, very tight, which gives you an indication that the reel itself hasn't been serviced in a very long time, that the greases have dried. I'm going to hold that with my micro pliers. Once I've sprayed it and I'm holding, I'm going to use that wire brush, clean up that dried grease that's on there. That's clearly going to impact the way that the pawl turns. All right, I'm going to put that into the parts tray. Now we should be able to slide the worm gear out. A couple of pieces on there. Just pay attention to how they come in and come out. Here's your line guide. I'm just going to put those back on here to hold that firm. That's actually going to go in the other way to the case. Again, you want to check the tracks of your worm gear as well. If there's any dirt and debris in there, come back, use that same brush to clear them out. These tracks are clean. Take the opportunity as well to clean, cosmetically clean, the issues of the accumulated greases on the side of this. This reel is going to clean up very, very nicely. But this has got old grease, you can see. And that's just a matter of the greases drying over time. So who knows when the last time this reel was used. If reels could talk, I would love to understand who bought the reel. I mean, think about this. This is 1941. This is just as World War II was, well, the U.S. was coming into the conflict. And, well, somebody was thinking about fishing among all those world events. All right. We also have the dirt underneath the line guide shield, so I'm going to use some penetrating oil and a cotton swab to see if we can't break that up and clean that up. I use that penetrating oil as a degreaser. That seems to be doing a very nice job here. Do the same thing on the inside here. Now the only spool break I'm seeing is a little felt pad here. I don't think that's what Julie was referring to when she said that drag washers. That's a spool break for casting. And I guess since these reels were made, one of the problems that has always been with these reels has been the backlashing. And even with the modern reels, even though they come up with all kinds of schemes and mags and the like, it's still an issue. All right, well, we've pulled out a couple of brushes. We did a few other things here. Let's just finish getting the dirt off of it. So much of the reel service and repair is cleaning the old dirt and debris off of a reel. The ones that have sat idle are the ones you've used as your daily fisher. They all accumulate dirt and debris. They're all open because of the way that the spool sits. They all accumulate dirt inside. The environment itself will cause some of that to dry, cake up, like you're seeing here. All of that needs to be cleaned as part of the service. All right, I think we're pretty good there. It's shined up nicely. I thought it would. It's got some nice chrome on it. All right, there's not much that you do in the back end of this. As I mentioned, you do have this little, if we want to call it a drag or a spool brake kind of assembly. It's a metal banded kind of a washer with a knob on this side, which will push that felt pad in and out on the spool to control the spool speed. All right, just a little bit of grease into that back bushing. Here's where the spool is going to sit. Take a quick look at the spool. We can do a little bit of cleanup on that. That one doesn't need to be as aggressive as the other one. I'm going to use a rod and reel cleaner for that. It's a pen rod and reel cleaner. I'll just kind of use a kitchen scrubby, which is very, very mild abrasive, but it gets the job done. And this one's like that old Certs commercial. It's a polisher and a cleaner. It's 2 mints in one, if you will. All right, clean that up. This is the click side for your bait alarm. That's going to go into the rear of the reel, or the non-gear side plate. This has got the pinion gear on it. main gear is sometimes referred to as the spool gear. We're going to set that aside for a moment. We'll come back and we'll reset this worm gear drive. To do that, we want to bring our line guide that we cleaned up in first. Set that in underneath and in the shield. Set it in the groove of the top bar. Then bring your worm gear over. Twist it as needed and seat it into the slot. With that in, we can take that little clip that we saw before. And Shakespeare used this clip for quite some time. This one was seated with the wide part up, narrow part down. That should hold our worm gear in place. Well, and then we have to put that pawl assembly back in. So we cleaned the pawl. I'm going to put that back into the hole in the line guide itself. I'm going to bring that over and I'm going to spin it a little bit so that the pole goes all the way down. Then I can bring that cap over. Before I put the cap on, I do want to put a drop of oil into that pawl assembly as well as onto the line guide. And I do not grease worm gears. That's because the worm gears can trap the dirt if you put grease in there, and then that will foul the performance of the reel itself. I need to find a smaller blade for this one. There we go. I think we got, no, that guy just wants to run away on me. Alright, let's find that. Find the slot. And once you got that started, just finish that off. And that's the frame side of the service. Just tighten it down. We've moved it all. And this turns nice and free and easy. Okay, next up then is to bring your spool in. And then we can pay our attention to the side plate. Cleaner towel there. In the side plate, as I mentioned earlier, we have the two screws holding the gear assembly on. Go ahead and remove those at this point. And when I take my pieces and parts off, they go into a parts tray for safekeeping. Particularly these smaller ones, as I mentioned earlier, you do need to pay particular attention to these parts because, well, you lose them, you're out of luck. Unless you find a donor reel. This is our main gear assembly. And again, doing this in answer to a viewer's question, but I'm also doing this to show you how this reel gets serviced. And that viewer question was about drag washers, and there are no drag washers, as I surmised, in this reel. Just using a hard bristle brush, which is basically the equivalent of a toothbrush, to clean up that back plate. Again, some penetrating oil here. We'll do the same thing on this side. We'll come back and we'll finish with that rod and wheel cleaner there. Just want to get some of the more stubborn dirt off of this. Be careful with the older reels if you're making sure that if you've got a collectible there, be very careful about the fit and finish. That does determine the value of the reel or its worth. So just, you don't want to scrape it or do anything unnatural in that case. Again, I'm going to put line on this, take it fishing. I'm not a collector. I guess when people ask me what I do or what it means to me, my response is generally I'm a custodian. I'll hold it for a little while and make sure that it has a good place to go and call home. This is your gear set. Again, pictures help. This should slide off, and I can tell right away why that was sluggish. It's the same issue we've had with the other ones. There's a lot of dried grease and dirt and debris on there. We'll do the same kind of rinse and repeat operation here. I'm going to just use that hard bristle brush to pull off the old dirt, and you can see it how it accumulates there. There's two drives on this gear. The inner drive is going to power the line guide, and the outer drive is going to power, I'm sorry, it's the other way around. This is going to power the spool. This one's going to power the line drive. I always seem to get that wrong for some reason. One more shot of penetrating oil onto the post of the gear sleeve. We'll do the same thing here. Get that old grease off. And we can refresh and put this back together. All right, I'm going to use fishing reel grease. That's all I recommend that you use is greases and oils, those designed for fishing reels. This, like the rod cleaner, is a Penn precision reel grease. Grease goes on to the inner gear and to the outer gear. We can bring that back onto the sleeve. Give it a test. I'll turn so much more free and easy now. Let's bring that back into the side plate. We can put a little bit of grease onto the shaft here, which is going to go into the side plate bushing. Just like that. Center your two holes. Nice snaps are always good. Go to your parts tray and get the two screws that belong in this reel. While I'm struggling with these small pieces and parts, I want to encourage you to ask questions like Julie did. If you have a question on a particular reel, this reel, or any reel in general, leave the question in the comments section. I will try to answer those questions for you. If it helps that you're having an issue that might be solved by me doing a video like this one, well, I'll try to do that too. I just had a question come in on how to replace a screw on a Penn Jigmaster, the side plate screw. We did a little video on that, and I hope that folks have found that educational. All right, that's the side plate. A little bit more dirt and debris on this little carrier ring here, so we'll try to take care of that while we're doing this. There seems to be a little bit of a outpouring of grease below here. Be careful with these. These do dry out over time. You can imagine this piece here is by itself is 80 years old or more, and as such, well, it can crack. Plastics and rubbers that they used in that period do dry out, dry up, and become very fragile. When you go to put it on, make sure you have clearance all around and that it's not interfering with your gear movement. Let's bring that piece over, insert. Oh, always one more, isn't there? Always one more piece. A bit of grease into the cap that's going to hold this side of the spool. Now we can bring that in. Bring that on. Set it to make sure it's nice and firm. Once you set that side plate, take those screws from your parts tray one at a time here. I'm just going to get one started that'll hold the assemblies in place. And when you do this, I like to do them in a kind of an X pattern so that I keep equal tension on the side plate as I reassemble it. Sometimes when you go just around the circumference of the plate sequentially, you wind up with a little bit of tension in the case, or a bulge, or a warp, or something. So I like to make sure that I kind of alternate where I'm tying it down so that it's equal in pressure. In this case, sort of an X pattern. All right, one more to go. We'll put the handle on. We'll see how we did. Julie, I hope this has been helpful to you. All right, one more in here. We'll go back and make sure that they're all tight because, well, you don't want to lose one of these screws. And sometimes as you're tightening the other screws, it pulls the plate in and, well, leaves the one that you initiated the tie down with a little bit loose. There you go, that one was a little loose. All right, a little bit of clean up here. A beautiful reel. These reels in the day probably sold for about $3, but $3 was a whole lot more than it is by today's standards, so it's probably comparable to a week's pay. I have to go back and actually check, but very expensive. At the time, you can see precision engineering, very well made reel all around. Handle goes on, that nut cap goes on. Grab my nut driver here to tighten that down. Okay, we didn't, just going to grab this side. We didn't pay much attention over here. So here's a hint for you if you're purchasing reels like this. Make sure all of the pieces are complete. If you're missing a piece, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to be hard to find. And one of the common pieces that go missing on these reels is this jewel cap here. So just pay attention to it. If you're searching for it, make sure that it's on there if you're considering purchasing the reel. A little toothbrush action here to get that last of the dirt off. Wipe it down, and we'll give it a try here. So what did we do? We took the reel completely apart. I showed you how every piece and part came off. I explained the features and why it's used. Look at how that reel cleaned up. It's a beauty. We talked a little bit about the spool, kind of anti-backlash feature here. The spool adjuster over here, that needs to be adjusted. Wow, that's certainly over tightened. And showed you how to take off the worm gear completely, take off the line guide and the pawl assembly, service the inside, and, well, make it go. So let's see how it did. Lots of smooth operator. Now we put grease into those channels, so probably can back off that spool a little bit. Now these are self-centering, or you have the two center pieces for this. So if the spool is leaning to one side or the other, that's what you use that for. Look at this reel. What a beauty. This is almost 85 years old, 1941, right? So 85 years old, and it's doing beautifully. Wow, very nice. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. And, well, I hope that I've answered the viewer's question about the mechanics behind this one, what's in the reel, and, well, what may be missing from here. Is this handle still a little bit loose? No, it's not. I guess we can finish with a drop of oil here, and we can finish by thanking our first responders, our police, fire, safety, and rescue, all of the folks that are involved day to day on our behalf, keeping us safe and out of harm's way. Well, there you go. The Shakespeare Triumph 1958 model GK, which, as we said, stands for 1941. A beautiful reel all around, and this one's ready to go fishing again. I hope you've enjoyed that. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day.